Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to day two, year two of Sync Up, the Jazz and Heritage Talent Exchange, our second annual conference on entertainment industry development here in the Crescent City. I'm Scott Ages with the Jazz and Heritage Foundation, and I'd like to welcome all of you here to the Jazz and Heritage Center, which is a building that we purchased about a year ago that we are in the process of converting into an educational facility. And it's wonderful to be able to use it for events such as this. I appreciate you bearing with the heat in the room. As I mentioned yesterday, after Katrina, the air conditioning units and all the copper piping and everything were stolen out of the building. And so we haven't had the ability yet to replace the AC system. So we're making do as best as we can. But I appreciate all of you for bearing with us. A couple of quick announcements, and then we'll move right along. We have this panel that's starting now on video games. At 10:30, we have another panel starting on how independent bands can break into the festival market. So that'll start at 10:30. I'll moderate that one. Want to make sure that everybody knows that out at Jazz Fest, we have a Sync Up hospitality area that you are all welcome to utilize as a place to cool down and have a refreshing beverage before getting back out into the heat of the infield. It's located on the third floor of the grandstand building, right behind the Music Heritage stage. So if you're out at Jazz Fest, please stop by, say hello, and have a cocktail. And now I'd like to turn the panel over to our moderator, Ric Neil, who has prepared an extensive agenda for this for this morning.
Starting with a shirt.
And I will let you introduce everybody, or have everybody introduce themselves, or handle it however you like. So everybody, please welcome our panel.
Thank you, Scott.
Hi. We'll start with introductions. I'm going to let the guys go down and introduce what they've done and who they are. I'll start with me. I'm Ric Neil. I've worked in video games way too long. I'm going back to EA, Electronic Arts. I'll start on May 6th working on a social gamer site called Rupture.com, which is basically digital distribution for video games with a kind of a Facebook social front end. And we'll have questions later. Anybody can ask questions at the end of it. We're going to go through our questions, our theme, and then go right to questions at the end. I think questions will probably last a long time. So with no further ado, I'm going to introduce you to Randy Eckhardt, and he's going to tell you how he got into this crazy industry.
Hi, I'm Randy. I've been in the game business for almost 19 years, and music supervision has been pretty much the core of the last 8 or 10 years. And games like Guitar Hero, Drum King, Guitar King, there's a million music games that are going right now. It's really a great opportunity for bands, and obviously my job, my career. And it's been a great time, and here to talk about it.
I'm David Hirshland. I'm president of Bug Music. We're a music publishing company, arguably the largest independent right now. So we manage copyrights as well as own copyrights for clients such as the estates of Johnny Cash, Willie Dixon, Muddy Waters. We have, I can brag and say we probably got about a third of the Jazz Fest lineup. Had Spoon and Booker T yesterday, and we've got Wilco today, and various others. We're kind of an eclectic mix of copyrights. We've been in existence since 1975 and recently expanded to include the Windswept Pacific catalog, which has a lot of classic 60s songs, which are good for video games as well as 70s, 80s, and contemporary writers. So we do licensing. We work with Randy, and the companies he represents license music into those games, and that's what we'll be talking about today.
Hello, my name is Ezra Jay. I'm the audio and film director at Energized Entertainment out of Baton Rouge. We actually started in Dallas. I've been in the gaming industry for about 3 years now. My background is in music production. I've done a lot of production for jingles for ABC radio networks, done some remixes and stuff in the music industry. Got an opportunity to get into video games and jumped on it. It's been a real learning experience, but it's absolutely great, and looking forward to continue.
Thanks. My name is Elliot Adams, and I've been in the video game industry for about 5 months. I work for the state of Louisiana, believe it or not. I am the state's digital media director in the Office of Entertainment Industry Development in the Economic Development Department. So no bureaucracy there.
Is that on your card?
It's on 2 cards. You have to tape them together. So I have a music industry background. I work for a company called CD Baby, and I was actually here last year on a panel at Sync Up with CD Baby. At the time, I was their chief technology officer. And so, I licensed their catalog of 1 million+ songs to play, well, actually, 2 million songs, to places like iTunes and Yahoo Music and all the, music retailers. And then, in a strange twist of fate, not entirely unrelated to being here last year for my first Jazz Fest, I found myself in Louisiana in December working for the state. So I sort of have a digital background and a music background, and I think that's why Scott put me on the panel.
Great. I think you all know what the theme, Scott came up with a theme. He basically says that with the CD sales down and out, a lot of folks have thought video games would be the next big thing as far as reaching the public and getting paid. So we're here to talk about that. And the first subject, I'll get these guys to talk about, I don't have to talk much because I get to moderate, is can I get my song in a game? And so I'd like to talk about the reality of songs getting licensed into video games, what they can do, if anything, to maximize their chances. It's not as easy as you would think, and my first initial foray for Randy will be that most games just want hits. Isn't that true?
Well, it depends on music games. For sure, you want songs that are familiar because that's what gives people sort of the fantasy, the experience to, live out sort of that rock and roll thing. And so when you're playing Guitar Hero or another music game like that, it's to have the opportunity to play a Cream song or something that you've grown up listening to or not. That's typically what we're looking for. And obviously at this point with Guitar Hero and Rock Band, with some 800, 900 songs involved, it's covering about all the catalogs of guitar-based, mostly guitar, rock and roll from the last 40 years. But that's not to say that there's hundreds of other games and other genres, from racing and action and other types of products like that need lots of different styles of music and not necessarily marquee. And of course, most of the game publishers, not all can afford the bigger hits and the great catalogs of music that have been around for a long time. So there are definitely opportunities in that space for any type of band and type of music and level of artist.
Yeah, a few illustrations of that might be timely, and just to give you guys some perspective, at least from our point of view, it's clear, as Randy said and Rick said, the Guitar Heroes, the rock bands, they have to be familiar songs. I mean, we have songs like American Woman, which does really well in those games because it's got kind of recognizable riffs and everybody knows that song. I mean, royalty checks have been, incredible. I mean, much more than even the performance income for a song like that, which is constantly on oldies radio. But the other, a couple of other experiences we've had, which will give you an indication that it is a fairly wide open. I don't say wide open in terms that everyone can get a song in a video game, but I think it was I'm blanking. The big nasty one that my teenage sons had to have that I didn't want them to have. Thank you, Grand Theft Auto. Thank you.
Got it, right?
Grand Theft Auto had a segment where you turn the radio on in the game, and there were like 14 different channels. We licensed a lot of songs into that. There was a country station. There were all different format. You guys are all nodding your heads like obviously I'm not a big gamer, but so there we licensed maybe 10 or 12 songs across various genres. Now I could foresee, and I don't think there was a Cajun Zydeco radio station in that game, but I could easily foresee that in a game. In these games where there's so many ways to go, there are opportunities, in certain games for a lot of music to get loaded in. Now, what are you going to, obviously the fees per song and something like that aren't outstanding, but it is, it is a way to get a fairly obscure song into a game.
And I guess based on my limited experience, our game that we are releasing is BCFX, a Black College Football Experience. And if anyone is familiar with Black College Football, you know that the bands play old school songs like Earth, Wind and Fire or Cameo. Talking Out the Side of Your Neck is a real popular one because that's a battle song for the bands. Maze, Frankie Beverly and Maze. So we, in order to really capture that experience, we had to license those songs as well as some of the newer tunes like Young Jeezy, because the bands, once they, that's their battle song. They want to play something that at the end of the show that the audience recognizes and they can do their dance routine to. So that's the whole culture of Black College Football. And if you've ever been to a game, you know that halftime the stands are fuller than they are, during the game. People wait outside until halftime show to come see the bands because the bands are really fantastic. And so that's the spirit that we definitely want to capture. It's not, we're trying to get away from the NCAAs and really brand ourselves as the total experience. So that locks us in, I guess, to some of those particular tunes. But also, we did do some original tunes that have that exciting, hip hop type songs that have it, but are kind of dual purpose. So you may have a game like All Out Blitz that is related to football, but it also could be, regular life or Under Pressure, where it has lyrics that are dual. So we've tried to provide some opportunities for local artists and local bands to participate, and but a lot of it really depends on the game and the audience that you reach.
Could I ask a question just related to this sort of thread?
Absolutely not.
Okay, I'll save it for the end then, Rick. I'm wondering, since I don't know exactly how licensing side works in a video game, is it typically a flat fee? Is it a points deal? It's all standard, I assume.
These books like this big.
Well, it's not standard. You ready? Is that
Yeah.
Yeah. Almost always flat fees, and these are for games like what I mentioned is the radio station in Grand Theft Auto. The music isn't driving the game, so we're not going to get a per unit royalty for most games where music is incidental. But in the Rock Band, Guitar Hero games that are music driven, we do get an advance against a royalty, and on paper doesn't look like a great deal as far as the royalties that we get paid, but given the volume of units sold, it works out pretty well.
Let's talk about getting paid versus getting exposure. That's a good segue to that. A lot of the value in getting into a video game is actually getting exposure for your band, not so much getting paid. I know video games have very tight budgets, as everybody does, so they're always trying to find out ways to save money, but they want the big, hottest, newest thing to drive people for the experience. So Randy, what's your opinion on getting paid versus getting exposure?
Well, it's sort of been the argument for a number of years on the video game side. Well, we're making these games, and why aren't we getting the music for free? And over the years, I've been in the middle of that, trying to make sure artists get paid, even though I was working at a big video game company who was basically throwing out the mantra that I was trying to get all the music I could for free. But the fact is that when you I put Government Mule and Derek Trucks on a NASCAR game that sold 5 million copies, as well as Widespread Panic. Some other bands that at that time had not really even taken off the way they all have, and you've got 3 million copies of something that gets distributed around the world, and about 6 or 7 kids play that one product, as they all come over to the house and whatnot. I mean, that's great exposure for a band, and of course, you don't want to give away your music, as much as that's happening in a lot of ways, even with bigger bands, putting their music online. The opportunity for promotion is very big in that space, and it's very focused. And when a kid's playing and having a great experience playing this video game, when they hear your music, it's a really good attribute to that.
When they do hear your music, how is it? generally, do you guys see it where they actually know who the band is after they've? Is it, you know?
Well, you have a jukebox. You can select songs. I mean,
Okay,
we
so
try
in
to
the-
give credits in the game as much as
Right.
possible. I mean, that's
So like
what
the
they
Grand
fought
Theft
for years
Auto
ago.
Right.
tuner, you're gonna know who's playing.
And certainly, if we're going to license a song for nothing or next to nothing, we're gonna ask for a credit. You know,
Credits.
even a card, Chiron, whatever they can put on, because if you're going to sell this as promotional, then there has to be
Yeah,
a way
sure.
for kids. And look, the reality is, okay, you have 6 million, 6 million games. What percentage of those kids are actually going to go seek out the music they hear? I don't know if anybody's got any statistics on that, but even if it's 5%, then it's good for the copyright.
Well, I think a lot of kids now look to games to find new music because, I mean, even we started doing John Madden football and putting, I think our first song was a Ludacris song that Jermaine Dupri produced for us. And it sort of went from that to these giant,
EA
40,
tracks.
50 songs on Madden, which at that point, how would you have ever thought music would go? It's all connected now, but the fact is that kids look to these games for new discoveries for music because they're not getting it in radio necessarily, and they're not getting it, they're not watching MTV anymore. So this is where they're spending their time. And so it's a great place to be for a music supervisor because we can help facilitate exposure to new artists and other creative music that's out there. So it's definitely a place for.
Yeah, and even artists. I mean, at one point, you see an artist that just get excited once they hear their song on the radio. I mean, man, that's the biggest thing. But now it's almost like a video game. Man, you're playing a video game and you hear my song. So it's really, I think it's really helped as far as exposure for artists.
And just one more point, I'd like to follow up on the promotion versus fee thing. I mean, it's my experience now that the games have pretty much come around to realizing they got to pay for the music. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong.
Where?
Correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, at least with us. I mean, I know you try to pick off the weak members of the herd that aren't represented by publishers and try to take them down. But yeah, I mean, when I think it's pretty hard for an industry that publicize it or where it's revealed that this much money. I mean, the gaming industry is so many multiples ahead of the record industry right now in terms of revenue that it's pretty hard to make an argument for Randy to make an argument to me that he's got to have his music for free. Even
I've never made that phone call, by the way.
Even a lower, even a modest fee is, I think, necessary and justifiable in every case.
Well, it's definitely an ongoing battle. I mean, Warner Music is sort of in battle with the Guitar Hero and Guitar Hero folks and Rock Band because of the rev share model, and of course that's dealing with music games. So I mean, I guess the point with I have to talk about both sides and help both sides if I can to get my job done and get paid. But the fact is that the budgets are fairly small, mostly if you're doing a flat fee. If I need like 12 songs for a video game or racing game, usually it's anywhere between $50,000 and $100,000 to spend. And of course, they always want 4 or 5 marquee bands who could get $15,000 to $30,000 for that use. And so by the time it starts, you still got a few dollars left. You try to get everybody paid as much as they can, and sometimes. A lot of times I'll also go to independent bands that help fill it up, but try to give them something because I know just the paperwork itself is enough to run you mad.
Right.
So it still comes down to writing a great song, no matter what you know about the business. But how do you get that great song in front of somebody that's in the video game world, and how do you really make sure that what you're going to be showing is a great song to those people? Right.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, I think a good song, a good band, a good, all those things get facilitated in some way or form or fashion that will get to the right people. We get of course, every music supervisor and every music publisher and record label get tons of music. But the fact is, if you're doing your homework, you're out there playing, you're doing all the creative things you can do these days with digital distribution and websites and all the participation opportunities, it's it's going to get around, and of course great music. We're all here because of great music, and not necessarily because I heard it on the radio. It's because my friends told me about it, or I got to discovery, exposure, opportunities. And
yeah, I mean, look, but let's be realistic. I mean, if you're a singer-songwriter and you write a great story song, it's not really probably going to be appropriate for most video games. Mastodon is very appropriate for video games. I mean, yeah,
Right.
And so many other things, right? I mean, I can just incorporate Mastodon in my life in so many ways.
yeah. Well, yeah, Mastodon. That's really all we really need. But well, again, one of the exception being what I mentioned before on the radio. If there's a country radio station embedded in a game, fine. Then you got a country. But I mean,
Or if it's a hunting game.
But no, most of these.
I did a Ted
Right.
Nugent video
Yeah,
game
look.
once, and
I mean, it's kind of it's similar to film and TV. You don't, what supervisors look for, what producer, directors, the creative people look for is, for the most part, setting a mood. They're not really, you're not, the narrative of the song isn't what they're looking for. In fact, it detracts from the scene in many cases. So if you have a song that's a great song, I mean, I can list, Townes Van Zandt, even Johnny Cash. A lot of, Cash is an interesting. Townes is probably a better example, or Graham Parsons, or these. They're great songs, but you have to get to the end of the song to really appreciate the song, and that's not going to happen in a video game, film, or TV. So really, and I think Ric's the theme of this segment is great music is great music. You can't. I think sit there if you're a songwriter, and I don't know how many. Actually, I'd be curious to know how many people are out there, are artists, songwriters, and how many people are like business people. How many like musicians, songwriter, artists? I mean, you can't, and take away from this or think about I'm going to write the perfect video game song, because there really is no such thing. You have to do what you do. You have to do your art, and if you happen to write a song that strikes me or Randy or Rick or whoever as the perfect feel, for lack of a better word, feel for that particular scene, then fantastic. Then you've I mean, it's like 90% luck. But again, if we were to describe a perfect song for a video game, it is, it's a heavy metal or a hard rock song that drives the action of the game. That's probably, 80 to 90% of what you guys use. The other 10 to 20% are things, like a good country or Townes Van Zandt song, or a hip hop song that fits in whatever is going on in the game at the time.
I'll give you an example of a song. We had a songwriter that wrote a song that didn't fit in the game. It was a mellow type song, but it was back up again, and it kind of talked about getting back up again. But the song was just phenomenal, and so we couldn't use it in the game because it didn't really fit. But everybody that hears it, so we're going to find a way to use that song in promoting the game, because it's a great song. And if you can imagine, losing a football game and you're really dejected, the song really speaks to that emotion. And everybody that hears it when they come to the studio, it's like, man, you got to find a way to get that song in the game. And so we'll probably use it for promotion or something, but it just doesn't fit. There's nowhere in the game where
But you like it enough that you want to get it somehow, right? So just remember that video games are expensive to make, and getting a song in a game is not cheap. It's not like, it just cost us $30,000 to get in. We have lawyers we pay. There's production, post-production. There's a lot of people that have to touch that music. So when a video game company does take a piece of music, they have to invest in that just to get it into the game itself. It's not just, they paid me $10 and that was the cheapest music they ever got. It's not that easy. So let's move to the next. How do video game guys find music? This is a good segue to that. What's the major motivating theme that they're looking for? And it's David's right. It's about how do I set the tone in the game, and how do I make the user, when I'm driving the Grand Theft Auto car through this part of town, how do I make him feel like it's East LA? What do I do there? What does that feel like it that way? And so the creatives go out, they look for ways to reinforce that. But it's a much more complicated and deeper process. Randy can find out that it's not just, hey, I like that song, let's go find that. It's a different way that they find things. They find music on the radio, they find music at festivals, they find different ways. Ezra said, we like this song, we're going to find a way to put it in there. And it's, how do you guys get in front of that? And where is the magic place that you can interrupt those people and look into that? So how have you seen it mostly? Just record labels?
No, I mean, I think it's, I get so many CDs all the time that it's all goes in this spot, and we try to filter through it, but it's about being out there and about being heard and being omnipresent as many places as you possibly can. But so that's the $1 million question, I guess. But it's getting to these panels, learning about what the businesses are, how the genres work, what people are looking for, and making contact, looking on credit sheets and who the supervisors are.
Yeah.
And we're all, you can type anybody's name on the web now and find pretty much anyone you want to reach out to on your own, and that's just, it's being proactive.
Who's the woman, just to make an analogy, who's the woman, I forget, in LA who works with Ingrid Michaelson and all those artists and gets them
Lynn
placed?
Grossman.
Right, and the point I was going to bring up is there's a particular manager agent in LA who does works with a lot of supervisors, and I think it's safe to say she is the engine for getting those artists on Grey's Anatomy or those TV shows. And so I would say, from my experience, when we were trying to license CD Baby stuff directly, we had sort of a separate department that was doing like one-on-one stuff for video games and TV and film. It was pretty important, who that person was that was your agent, so to speak. And if the music supervisor on Grand Theft Auto got a CD in the mail with no context for who it was from or what it was, I think it would be somewhat doubtful they would listen to it. I could be wrong, though.
Well, yeah, I mean, the reality is there's only so much time in the day. I mean, you're better off being represented either by a label or a publisher and having us go to Randy and the other supervisors in the area. The other thing we have to do, and we're constantly challenged, is to come up with targeted pitches. If we send 10 CDs from this month's releases in a package, you might enjoy getting that, but it's like, what are you going to do with it? You're not sure. Whereas if we know there's a specific game you're looking for, it's all about communication. And Randy will tell our creative people, look, I'm looking for, this genre, this type of feel, and here's a description of the scenes, and that gives us a chance to hone in on, half a dozen songs maybe per use and get them, and it saves everybody time and makes for good working relationships. I mean, the scattershot approach, especially if you're trying to do it on your own, just isn't going to work.
Yeah, and I think if you have if you are familiar with the game or the genre that you're presenting to, make sure you, have some idea of what type of songs that they use, what they're really looking for, how it'll fit in the game. A lot of times, we may get a lot of CDs and, it's without really going through them, well, how is this going to fit? But if it's, first of all, if it is from someone who I know and I've got good music from before, then that makes a difference. But also if it's tailored, if someone took the time to say, look, I understand what your game is about, and I think this will fit in this area or that area, then I'm a little more intrigued. They took a little time to at least see what we're looking for.
Yeah, I mean, perfect example. I did a game called Road Rash 3D back in the mid-'90s, and it was one of the first games that had music. We even had music videos in the game as vignettes, and we did a deal with, I hate to say it, but Atlantic Records, and I got a box of CDs, and there was some Amy Grant in there, and a few other things that didn't make any sense, and it was it took a while to get through it, and sort of funny opportunity of discovery was this little tape, and it said Kid Rock. And it was like his first demo, on the new record, and we listened to it. It was perfect, but they weren't even pitching that. It was at the very bottom, and of course, the record came out a year later, and he sold 15, 20 million copies. But it does really help to filter and to have the right people that you guys hire that look through all the projects and understand what's being pitched, and if you have management, same thing. Just being focused and having some knowledge of who you're talking to and what they want to listen to, to get your song secured on a game.
So in video games, there's two types of music opportunities. One would be a music game like a Rock Band or something, which is kind of new in the last 5 years. But forever, there's always been soundtracks or supporting music at that level. And the people that make the decisions on who's going to put what music in there are totally different on that, where music games are more business opportunity, and they're looking for, find that big hit that is going to drive sales. I want to get the new AC/DC Rock Band because I'm a big AC/DC fan. Where soundtracks, like Ezra, is like, this has to really support my game. It has to feel like black college football experience. So in your experience, who's making those decisions on who gets the music and where inside the video game world?
I think it's a host of people. I think it is music supervisors like myself, but the fact is that the producer of the game, everybody's pretty smart about music these days in the gaming space. I think probably the way I got my job so long ago was that there wasn't as much knowledge about it, but kids growing up now, have so much music and a pretty solid knowledge. The producers of the game come with their lists in a lot of ways, and those are the guys that make the final decision. All I can do is help facilitate some creative as well as securing the tracks. But again, go look at the credit list on some of these products, and you'll see the producers, and it doesn't hurt to get your music out to these guys too.
I had a question for you guys about the music-driven games like Guitar Hero. Because you can buy, if I understand right, I'm not much of a gamer either, you can buy like a plug-in or a pack of new music to play with Guitar Hero that, like, for whatever band you like, they've released. But what are the costs to, like, Activision to take your song and build out, the pack that you're going to buy to plug into Guitar Hero? So in other words, what's the bar of a kind of band that has a certain level of, fan base to be worth Activision's while, more or less? I mean, does that have to be just like total, canonized, top 40 rock band, or can there be big indies that could ever get their own, Guitar Hero track done?
I think it's just at this point it has developed. The catalogs are pretty deep, and obviously you can buy song packs on any of these games, and So the point is there's definitely opportunities at this point for indie bands, especially bands that have followings who, getting more well known and are on the up. I mean, I guess the issue really is that it probably takes about $10,000 to $12,000, $15,000 to really code out each song, and I think Harmonix Rock Band has about 120 programmers that all they're doing is creating these the music.
And that doesn't count re-recording it.
Well, that's the original masters now are what people use, but right. Guitar Hero 1 and 2, they were all re-records, and that costs 10 or 15 grand just on its own, and so it's a big investment. So the people really have to love you, or you're on the way up, or you've been there and or on the down, but you've got a great catalog, and the music's going to work really well for the product. Or
yeah, I mean, just to follow up real quick on that, I think we have bands like Kings of Leon, Spoon, who can get songs into people pay attention. That people in the games pay attention and know when bands are breaking. So you can get indie, which you call indie bands that are perceived to be on the rise in those packs, and it's it works out for everybody because from the planning stage to the release, like you said, there's so much work that goes into it. You've got, I don't think it's 6 months, but you've got a lag time between when we would license a song to you and when the pack actually hits the game hits the marketplace. So there has to be a little bit of foresight going on. You don't want to just have dinosaur rock,
right?
Right.
Oldies, especially for kids. Kids want, so kids will see Kings of Leon or Spoon, or Wilco are in this pack. I got to get it, even though it may be more heavily populated with songs their parents were familiar with, right?
Sure. I think it's just it's a swell effect. I mean, if things start building, we want to know about it, and obviously when you want to be on the cutting edge of picking, artists that are going to break, and so there is that pipeline of Rock Band and Guitar Hero that it could be somewhat limiting, but there's a lot of game publishers out there that are making music products at this point that may not have the bigger budgets, but want to invest in being cutting edge and making songs available that wider genre of kids and adults, whoever that want to play. Now that the video game market is more of has a wider breadth of the demographic. It used to just be core 18 to 35-year-old men. Now with the music games, it's completely exploded, and little girls, old men, everybody's playing these products now, and it's we have to sort of feed everybody's musical styles, and so it's a good spot.
Yeah, and I'm sure in some cases, you want to be at the forefront of music. For instance, we want to include the songs that the marching bands are going to play in the fall. So those haven't been released yet. So it's a challenge, sometimes you have to talk to the labels and see, what really are they pushing or what they're excited about, and, to kind of get a feel for. And I'm not sure if it's the same way with the guitar.
Yeah, I mean, Madden football, all those types of games,
right.
They want to have the latest cutting edge stuff. I mean, music games are a little bit different because of the investment in the technology and developing out each song. But again, I mean, all these, whether action sports or racing, like you said, a lot of the genres that need up-tempo music, we're always looking for new stuff.
So one of the questions you guys might ask is, how do I get in front of these decision makers, and what do? I'm going to tell you the story of how Jermaine got in Madden. Remember how that happened? So Jermaine Dupree was a big, huge Madden fan, and he just started hanging out at Madden Fests and Madden Bowls and emailing the guys on the Madden team just as Jermaine. And one of the guys on the team knew who he was and said, I really like his music. And I think they met at a Madden Bowl one year, at a Super Bowl, and he showed up and was like, hey, that'd be really cool. Well, then 2 years later, the song was in the game. But it took that long. And so there's avenues now that are way better than Facebook, MySpace, and things like that, where you can actually talk to the guys making the video games. And if they're interested in your music and there's some kind of, you work with it, just like Ezra said, we really like this song, we want to find a way to do it. So if you entrench yourself into that community of what that game is, and you're as big a fan as they are with you, things can happen that way. So you kind of have to build the synergy on your end. You can't just send something and wait for them to come back and go, hey, I'm the best, and why haven't you guys talked to me yet? So you really have to do a lot of your own co-promotion. If you're a fan of those guys making the game, and vice versa, then big things can happen that way. So let's talk about the future and what it looks like in 5. You want to say something?
Oh, I think, did you have a question?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I mean, realistically, if you have a band, I mean, you guys are pretty much going to specific publishing companies, because, I mean, I don't think just like Joe Blow off the street has an awesome band, because we need to talk about clearances and who owns copyrights and where, if they have everything cleared. So I mean, are you going specific publishing companies, or are you trying to get, I guess specifically for people in town that really just want to see, their band on a video game? I'm not talking your Guitar Heroes, but music-driven games. I mean, it's more realistic to have a publishing company pretty much shop their music and them probably come at you as well. Am I
Yeah.
with that?
Yeah, there's changes. There was a game that Microsoft put out called Voodoo Vince, and the lead programmer was a big Jazz Fest guy, and he knew this. The theme was it's going to be set in New Orleans. It's going to be cool, and he just knew a guy down in town and said, "Will you come and score all the stuff for Microsoft?" So Microsoft hired him as an employee, scored all the music, and did all the music himself. But it was only because that guy found that independent art. So you'll find some game companies like Ezra, they want to do all their music themselves and they don't want to license anything out. We're going to create it all ourselves. Dead Space is a perfect example. They created all their own music in that game. They hired their own people. They did their own thing. They don't have to pay master performance rights, nothing on that. They own it all. And then there's other band games that need that hit to drive it. So there's 300 video games at any particular point in time being developed right now, and that changes. And so it's a matter of, like I said, find out what the niches that you want to find into. That Voodoo Vince thing never would have happened if that composer wasn't a fanboy, both both way back. And they didn't know each other when they started. It was just one of those, hey, would you mind? I'm looking for something like that. So, go ahead.
You want to?
Well, I was just going to say, yeah, I mean, it's better to be represented if you can be. On the other hand, publishing companies can't even collectively represent 100% of the music that's out there.
Right.
And I've got one person solely dedicated to the video game world, and she's got an almost impossible job. I have 250,000 copyrights that we manage. She has to figure out which of those copyrights make sense for which particular game and which particular scene. It's an awesome task. Take Warner Chappell that has 2 million copyright, or EMI, that have millions of copyrights. Now, obviously, a lot of them aren't even appropriate, but the reality is there's an awful lot of work that we have to do just to get our catalog into manageable shape to present it to these guys. So if like Rick was saying, there's these other avenues. If you can pursue them, on your own, then you're ahead of the game. There are now some aggregation companies. There's one I know about, GameQs, Todd Resnick, that are actually sites for game developers. And when you think about video games, and this is something we haven't really talked about yet, but you've got the established EA, Activision, you've got these companies that we're mainly dealing with, but there's hundreds, maybe not hundreds, there's a lot of video game developers in Russia right now that are just that are developing games on on their home systems. They need music. They're in every kind of developed or even semi-developed country of the world. There's a home industry of, and it's kind of akin to your local independent filmmaker, that you're an artist in New Orleans and there's somebody making a documentary about Katrina, or a documentary, whatever, and you befriend that person, you get your song maybe for nothing in the film, and suddenly you've got a reel that you can go show people. Well, it's the same thing with games. If you can get, if you're starting on the ground up, you can get hooked into one of these sites like GameQs, who these independent game developers go to pick music, and they hit upon your song. You can get into a game that way. I mean, there are ways to do this, other than through the traditional methods.
Well, I think even more so. I mean, to add to your point, the game business is becoming a lot like the music business, in a sense where independent developers, like you said, are now being able to publish online digitally, and it is causing some stirs, which is great because it gives more opportunity for creativity and people to be entrepreneurs, and so that's great for us, and as a gamer, as a consumer, as well as working in the business, because I want to make a game and get it digitally distributed and do it our way and not have to go through Activision or whatnot. So that's, go look on Xbox Live Arcade. There's a lot of small publishers out there that do need music, and they don't necessarily have the time or the bandwidth to pull that off and find the best music possible. So that's another way to look at it.
Let's talk about the future for a minute, because.
Do you have another question?
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I noticed that at least the first few versions of Guitar Hero and Madden, they do use a lot of baby bands, especially Guitar Hero, where it was like not the main set list,
Right.
and there's like if you beat 10 songs, you get these 10 like heavy metal songs, and probably by bands you don't know of yet. How did they come across those? Because obviously those aren't the ones we need to get those songs in the game to sell it.
A lot of that was bands of the guys who were making the game, and local bands in Boston, and just.
Yeah,
And on EA, they would say, if we give you Ludacris, you got to take these 5 bands too. That's part of the deal. No, that's part of the totally. They said, if you want this one, we'll give it to you this price, but you got to give me these 4 other guys.
Locked in, and those aren't bands that somehow finagled their way in. They were part of the package
No,
deal.
again, it's
big
the,
titles now.
Not well for Guitar Hero. Your example. The question is for Guitar Hero, and again, it was having friends. The guys were fans of those bands, and that's what made the difference. Whether they were in the band or they were fans of them, and they had the power to put them in the product, and they were punching the code. So again, it's all about making relationships and having friends. in those areas, and most people in the gaming business are very open, not a ton of ego. I mean, it's starting to grow bigger and bigger, but the fact is very, very approachable people in that industry.
Is there industry publication with music supervisor names for video games? Video game music supervisors?
You know,
Well, you can go to Moby Games and pretty much find most of the credits for all that right there online. So, and if not, go to LinkedIn.
All right.
Right, LinkedIn will have everything on that level.
You know-
That's why I say the tools now compared to 7 years ago, amazing to be able to get to these people.
I mean, anybody. I mean, a lead programmer could, you know, your band could be, you know, he could be a huge fan of your band. He's the lead programmer. He just like hands it to me or hands it to the producer, and all of a sudden starts working its way in. It's just, there's anybody, you know, someone a little bit higher up on the chain, but you can go on any credit list in the game, and you know, just if you can't get, you know, start seeding those people with your music, and you know, eventually if the music is good, it'll find its way some way if that's really where you want it to go, and you think it'll make a good fit.
Go ahead.
Okay. Randy, I think that was you who said, talking about Xbox Live Arcade, you said find the gamers, small indies, gamers who need music but don't have the bandwidth to go out and do it themselves. What do you mean by bandwidth? You been talking about bandwidth, or do you mean like they don't have the resources?
Resources,
They don't have
right,
the time to do
right.
it themselves.
Thank you.
And they're maybe not as knowledgeable or have, you know, the expertise. I mean, like with Guitar Hero, Red Octane was the original developer or publisher with Harmonix, but they didn't know much, believe it or not, about music, which was great for me because that's what I did. But you never know. These guys have a great technology, and they're really focused on this, you know, this thing that they're doing, and sometimes they just don't have, you know, again, the bandwidth or the knowledge base to really, you know, make it fit well.
So those publishers on the arcade, they're still paying console fees to Microsoft in that case. Is that correct?
You pay a percentage. I mean, they're the gatekeeper, so it's
Right.
you know.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not as bad as like a carrier of mobile, you know, phones.
You get your game
Oh,
approved,
what is?
and then your game starts selling, and a certain percentage goes to Microsoft for every sale.
Because I was wondering, you know, when I was at Game Developers Conference, I actually had a chance to go to the EA headquarters, and we met with those guys, and they were saying, in 3 years we could be doing like majority social media as opposed to, you know, DVD case, you know, console games.
Let's talk about the future. That's a great segue. So let's talk about the future. In the next 4 years, the next 2 years, there's going to be 4 new platforms: a new Xbox, 2 new Nintendos, a new PlayStation Portable. There's always new devices coming out from these things. It's not like people throw away their old stuff, so the market actually grows by that. There's another new Nintendo DS. Well, you can sell an old Nintendo DS and now new Nintendo DS. So the video game world is growing in leaps and bounds that way. The other thing that's taken on by storm is user-created content. I don't know if you've seen Little Big Planet, but it's all about user-created content. And what that means is I, as a user, am making a level that now I can share with my friends. Well, that's going to come to music. It's going to have to. That community is going to happen. So whether it's a community of rock band people that write their own songs that you can plug into Rock Band or something, that's coming. It's going to be down the line. So how do you get involved with that? You stay on the websites, poking those guys, joining those user communities, getting up on the game, seeing how it is to find out when that's all happening. The other thing Elliot talked about was the Gamer Developer Conference. You really don't have to go. You can read all of the talks and everything and see what it is in there and see who did the talk, and then go look on LinkedIn and send them an email. I mean, most producers like guys
And when
with
you start
balls
to
of steels that'll walk up and say, "Hey, man, I really want to help you guys out."
when you
I
do
can
that,
this."
say you were at GDC and that you talk to them, and they won't remember.
They will
anyway.
never know. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, you don't
Hey,
even
I
have to
met
go to
you
the
at
conference. You
GDC.
just hang out in the
Yeah.
W
So there's
lobby with
plenty
them.
of ways that you can do right from your house here and get into those communities to drive that thing. And be aware of what's going in the future. What's going to happen in the next 2 years, those budgets are set. The programming's being done. It's done. They're, very hard to get into something that's going to ship in 18 months from now, because just like anything else, you got to ship on time, so the risks are high. But the social networking and then any community-based experience, join MySpace, join Facebook, see how all those guys are doing it. Find guys that work in video game companies that are on Facebook, make them your friends, see how that goes. Because video game guys have totally embraced Facebook. I mean, I don't know of anybody that's not on Facebook. Even Randy's on Facebook at this point.
Get off Facebook.
Yeah.
I'm not on Facebook.
And the other trend that's coming along is, right now it's all about top 10 hits. But I see it right now. Everybody wants to be niche. So they want to have the drum, the king drum, right, for rock band. They want to have, the hip hop genre. They want to get these genres over, because what they can do is they can leverage all the work they've done to build this infrastructure and how to build these CDs, and now they can say, well, since the infrastructure is all built, I can apply it just to Zydeco music, and I'm not going to have to pay this big, huge overhead of starting up the whole system, and I can just do Zydeco now and leverage that. And so find those opportunities. Or see, it's like the 4th year of shipping this game. It's a lot easier to put music in than the 1st year of shipping that game, because there's so much other work that's getting done. So when you look at things like Grand Theft Auto and stuff like that, they didn't have a radio station the first 2 years of the game. It never happened. But now that they're reusing that code year after year after year, and now they can just start adding those features back in. So you can look at the future of like, hey, it's Saints Row 1 was pretty cool, but I bet you Saints Row 4, which they're going to still keep doing, maybe there's opportunities. So find those opportunities and look where the future is going to be going for that. And then in the state of Louisiana, there's lots of opportunities, right, Elliot, for what that's going on in the future.
Indeed, there are. The program I administer offers a 20% tax credit on producing video games and similar entertainment items here in the state. And so Energized, that was a big part of why you guys came.
No, definitely. It was a big part of why we came, the incentives, the tax breaks, when we relocated from Dallas. So absolutely. And,
yeah, and just to kind of briefly touch on it, I mean, my ultimate boss, Secretary Stephen Moray, his 3, I guess, targeted industries are coastal restoration technology, nuclear power, and digital media. And then, Governor Jindal is sort of echoing that pretty loudly in front of the press, and they're behind it, and all the different regions are pretty strongly behind it. So it's an active campaign. It's not just an also-ran sort of thing on the books.
Right, and Energize was the first company to take advantage of the digital media tax credit.
Right.
So we were.
And it's not well known in the video game world yet.
Yes.
He's doing a great job getting out there and doing it. But you guys can, as an artist, you can also say, hey, and did you guys know that you have this opportunity if you work with me?
Yeah.
And that's more of a benefit that you wouldn't have in any other state.
Yeah, and we're hoping that, right now, we're about to go into legislative session, and our legislation will be up for renewal and modification. So we're hoping to even have a slightly more attractive incentive coming out of it. And we have other stuff like just an angel investor tax credit. So if you're receiving angel monies from anywhere in the world ostensibly, but you're based in Louisiana, you can get a cash refund back from the state of 50%. So if you raise $2 million, the state will write you a check for $1 million, which is pretty attractive if you have investors. So they're putting their money where their mouth is, I guess you could say.
Talk some more about that.
I left the checkbook at home. But,
No, you talk about angel investments, but one of the panelists here is talking about getting your fans to invest and doing the radio, the record, or helping you finance some of the recording costs. Is that kind of the same thing? I mean, what exactly, where are the parameters there? Where are the limitations? And is a record digital media or only games? Talk some more.
Yeah, well, I will. We have 4 programs, right? So in the Office of Entertainment Industry Development, which Kevin Conway works in as well, and Kevin actually works in the sound recording part of our department. And there's a sound recording credit. Dave Matthews Band was just in New Orleans recording, and they got 25%, back in tax credits on what they did here in the state. We have the film credit, which I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with, which has made Louisiana the 3rd top location for shooting outside of New York or LA. And then mine is digital media, and the 4th is live performance, which is dubbed Broadway South, because they're trying to get Broadway previews to happen in New Orleans instead of like in Boston or Maine or wherever they might happen now. So really for most entertainment sectors we have something. Digital media is pretty limited to video games and interactive digital content. Someone's website for a restaurant wouldn't really qualify. But the angel investor credit, that's not in our shop, so there probably is a minimum, and I know there's some qualifications to it. But I mean, getting people to invest in recording a record, there's a lot of great and well, in the next room, you could leave us and go hear about a lot of great things happening where people are investing in records sort of as a future. That may qualify if it was a big enough spend. I don't know.
And they can go to your website to find out all the details.
Yeah, certainly. We actually have a new website, which I'm pretty proud of, which is ledlouisiana.com, I think, or .gov. I think it's .com, actually. But if you just, search for Louisiana Economic Development, it has sections on small business and tax credits and everything else.
Very cool. Let's open up to questions before we run out of any time. So I know you guys got a bunch of questions. Go ahead.
With the emergence of virtual worlds, do
Uh-huh.
you see video gaming crossing over into virtual worlds, and then from there, do you see more of an opportunity for, I guess, music to have an ability to
Like one of the projects
a
on,
bigger presence, I suppose, for non, big tier bands? Like, would you see like an emergence for baby bands to start making a presence in such a way?
there's a big push right now to get co-op jams going on. So how do I get a community of guys? We all plug our guitars in, and there's like 3 or 4 sites doing that now.
Oh, yeah.
And that's going to grow into performances, like you read in Snow Crash and any other.
I mean, like you have your Duran Duran like performance and your YouTube performance, but I mean, I think at South by this year we got to see there was some pretty much like hooked up, like you're sitting there watching a band play, you're watching the virtual world of the band play. Do you see that really kind of growing and an opportunity for, say, New Orleans bands to like kind of break into the virtual world?
Yeah, I think the virtual worlds keep growing and getting bigger and bigger, and like the Yo-Bills and the silly ones all the way up to Second Life. Second Life will put in the bigger features first. I know they're working on a virtual band thing itself, but not all the band members need to be in one place, kind of thing. But you could be all in New Orleans jamming in your houses and be in Second Life at the same time. And it's really the emergence of how the musicians grab onto that to make it a feature and see how it goes, and what's the first band to really make that thing happen. But it's been foretold in science fiction books for 10 years. But it's starting to happen now. There's actually 3 sites I know on the PC that have, you can do virtual jams with anybody on the planet.
How do we monetize that, Rick?
How do we monetize that? That's a good question.
It's always the good question.
Yeah, that's unknown yet. It'll be a new market. It'll have to, when you find out what the real business model is, you kind of bumble along for a while.
I saw a pretty interesting presentation about Second Life, and I haven't kept up with Second Life too much. I've heard it's somewhat down in users, but labels like, I'm not sure what his label is, but Talib Kweli had, his label had bought a brownstone in Second Life. They designed it. You can go in and hang out and like choose different songs in his records to listen to. And is that something that people are still doing, or is that?
Yeah and no.
Okay.
Things in Second Life are hot for like 10 seconds, and then
Okay.
they're on to the next big thing. It's the land of the ADD.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I know the law is, that's like an opportunity specifically for entertainment law right now, is doing the licensing in Second Life, because like we're just saying, if Duran Duran does do a live show, how, like Dave was saying, how do you monetize that? And I think that when I talk about opportunities for musicians to get into the Second Life, that's also opportunities, like, I guess when we're talking about the digital world, it's really a global market now, global everything. It doesn't matter where you're at, and I think that's also opportunity for entertainment lawyers. It doesn't matter where you're at anymore, because I mean, if you can do the licensing, and granted, this is all a hazy area right now because like this is the forefront of what is entertainment law becoming, and like with entertainment, I guess with virtual worlds, it's like so that there's now like a new kind of licensing, a new kind of it's like it's all the same, but it's a little bit different, and I think that's.
I think what you're going to see is how it changes is the restrictions of how it's been in the past to what it's been going. The music industry is a great example of, well, I can download the song for free and I didn't pay anything for it, right? How do you monetize that? It's out of the bag already. Well, you know, the Zune and the iTunes have done a good job of, hey, you can subscribe to every song, or you can pay 89 cents for every song, and that's a good way that they've been able to monetize it. And I think as you get to the virtual world, there's going to be an expectations of kids that all digital entertainment, whether it's movies or music or books, is always free. So you're going to move to microtransactions and subscription based. It's the only way to really beat that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm doing a game. I'm doing a game called Rock Free from Acclaim, and it's a free online music game, and it's all microtransactions in the product, and the bands, it's just a rev share, pro rata rev share, so it's 5, 10, 15% of the revenue from the ad sales, from the in-game merchandise sales, all go into a pool, microtransactions, and then that gets split amongst the artists and the.
Is that all pay for access type deal? I mean, are you paying? Is there a fee? Like
No, the consumer, for the consumer, it's free. It's like they say it's a Korean model, you know, online gaming. So it's free to play, but again, you know, once you start building your avatar and your band or whatever, you know, all those things cost to you know, suit up, so to speak.
Yeah,
but
it's the freemium model. It's free at first,
Freemium?
and then you add things to
Right.
make it pay.
But the artists, you know, split that revenue. I mean, we weren't giving money up front, but they, you know, they get a chunk of that, and it's also the frequency of play. So some bands, if they're hot, I mean, they'll get more of that revenue. And I think it's coming out. It's been beta for about 2 months, but I think it's finally going to be firing. So check it out, rockfree.com.
And I guess if there was a median like in digital phones, or when you talk about phones, I mean, people are used to paying fees for phones like ringtones, and so I guess that gives them a more comfort level. I think that's why ringtones have made money, at least up to this point, because you know it's not unusual to pay another fee on your phone. So
And
I
it's
guess
the
there's no,
microtransaction model.
Right.
It's 99 cents. It's,
Right.
it's don't think about it kind of thing. So it's that $60 buy-in that's tough for most people. So, any other questions? Come on, I know you guys have some questions. Wow.
Do you have any other future prognostications for us, Rick?
Do I have future
But
prognostications
did we
for you?
cover the future?
I can see
Did we go
in
far enough into the future?
a Flickr-based website based on music, where everybody's sharing all their music.
Yeah.
And all that music gets aggregated into any rock band or product you would want. That's gonna happen.
How-
People
how-
are sharing loops, and you can
Right.
go up there and take this guy's drum loop and that guy's bass loop and put your guitar loop on top of it and create new content. It's gonna happen. So, go ahead.
Yeah, when you receive music, do you prefer to receive, you know, an email and a link, or do you prefer to receive a physical copy with the press kit and a, you know, CD with tagged songs?
Email.
Email?
Yeah.
I mean, we share it. A lot of the publishers have FTP sites, and you know, it's just nice. I mean, I can't organize paper anymore. Everything's on hard drives, and you know, it's just where we are, unfortunately. And it's just, you know, it's
Way
great
easier
to
to
have
keep
CDs.
10,000 songs on your computer than CDs on your desk.
yeah, and I've got stacks of CDs that
You'll
hardly
never
ever
listen
get
to.
listed.
Yeah.
My friend at CD Baby used to like when a band would send a link to where he could just stream it on their site and not even have to put it in his iTunes at
Yeah,
first.
yeah.
Just as easy and like non-committal as possible on the front end, you know.
That's fair.
Elliot, with I guess the emergence like we saw at South by with pretty much not like big blown out games, but games you can download to your iPhone and stuff like that, like just like smaller, like almost brainless games. Do you see that as and also an opportunity to do like licensing of music?
I was going to ask these guys, you know, everything I've been hearing is the move to iPhone games and, you know, Facebook games and everything else. And I'm not really sure what the opportunities for music are in a
I can tell
game
you what the
the
business
last 4
models on
minutes.
those are.
Yeah,
So,
that's your
like,
next project.
A
right?
Madden game will spend in excess of $12 million to make it, and an iPhone game will spend $25,000 to $30,000. So the amount of money that you can share out of that, you know, is minimal. They have to sell them for 99 cents or $2 on iPhone, but it takes a long time to recoup what they put into
Yeah,
it.
and would the need for music be pretty different though? You're talking about like, you know, hard rock for like a, you know, a shooter game or whatever, but like a casual game, I mean, that could just be anything, right? It could be probably more electronic or something, or you know, less.
You know, every game designer is going to have a theme that he's going to want to follow, and it's like, no, dude, this is the country
So that could open
Pick
it
and
up
straw out of
pretty
my
wi-
ass
a
song,
bit
that's what I
wider.
want.
Thick and strong.
No, the processes and disciplines for those $50,000 games are pretty much the same, but they pay a lot less for them. So they're waiting. Basically, anybody making iPhone games is basically making it for free, and then waiting for the back end to come on that. So it has to be a hit. Otherwise, they go on to the next game. That's why you see so many of them, because they keep throwing them out there to find out what's a hit.
Well, and there's millions of people making iPhone app games, so that's a big
Right. And the big publishers are having a hard time. It's like Super Monkey Ball from Sega. They paid a lot of money to make that. It's going to take them a long time to recoup their investment. But the guy that made, 99-cent fart thing, he made his money back right away. So, and that's the different opportunities. And it's changing the whole...
soundtrack to that.
The future of creativity right before our eyes.
It's changing the whole dynamic of how we make games, too, because now it's more opportunistic. And,
Games are literally going in the toilet.
yeah,
No.
right in the toilet. All right, well, thanks for coming out. Any other questions?
Thank you guys.
All right, you guys. Thanks. I know
Thanks.
it's hot in here. Thank you.
Oh,